Top of the morning to you. I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. We are getting ready. So this is it. We're going to stop watering our sweet potatoes. Yeah, no more water, but they're not even gonna come up yet. And then we're also going to do some harvesting. I'm gonna do some just walking around the garden, see if there's anything that needs to be trimmed, which I know there is, and getting some beds ready in order to be able to be planted in soon. Not today, but soon. So it's kind of like a step-by-step process. Works out really good this time of year because of the heat. So we can get in and do it and then just let it rest, let it cool down a little bit before we start planting. We got a lot of things going on right here. This sweet potato patch is booming. So we are going to take care of this today and start prepping it for harvest. So at this point, we're anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks from the harvest, and I want to cut the water off. I want to stop watering that one bed. And this is really why I did this in-ground system, which I had fought for many, many years. Basically, I was kind of ignorant to it and didn't know, like, if I built my own system, how that would work out. So I'm going to show you what is going on here, and then I'll give you a little overview on why I want to cut the water off to it. Seems kind of crazy when you still got this time left and it's still hotter than fire out. There's going to be some good compost come out of these leaves, I can tell you that much, and some good chicken food. But they come down here, and all I have to do is just turn that, and this will stop water coming to this entire bed. But all of these other beds will continue to get watered. We're not gonna stop doing anything else to this bed. We're not gonna stop treating it if we get diseases. We're not gonna, well, we're gonna stop fertilizing it because basically there's no more. But I wanna cut the water off to it because at this point where they are, they're in the stage of where they can start to plump up and really start getting their final size. And we don't want them to go to that final size and then crack. So we're just gonna stop water because at this point it's so hot that we need to have our gardens watered every other day just to keep the roots cool enough to keep things going. And we're getting a little break in the heat, I mean a little break. So I do expect to see some things kind of start booming back and start producing more. So we're gonna take advantage of that and just keep that bed off. I do need to keep, because these black-eyed peas here are growing out of that bed, so I will need to keep an eye on them and make sure they don't wilt, but I can spot water them. So I can just come out with a watering can and water those every so often. These are pretty hardy and they like the heat, so it shouldn't be that much of an issue. Sorry, I don't recommend standing next to the beehives. You might want to move. Go on, get. You're gonna get your butt stung full of bees and I ain't gonna do nothing about it. Get. Can't tell her nothing, I'm telling you. So that's what we're gonna do here. These actually, they don't even need to be fertilized either. So these are nitrogen fixers. So if you do fertilize them, it can kind of hurt the plant and cause the production to drop. So we're not gonna be overly concerned about that. Now, I'm not gonna tarp this bed though. If it rains, fine, let it rain. Now, if we're gonna get some crazy torrential downpour with inches of rain or something, then I may come out and just slap a tarp over it. But you know, your summertime storms or something like that, we're not gonna worry about that. We're just gonna let the Lord take care of the rest of it. And then we're gonna come in and get our bounty. Hopefully it'll be good and I'll bring it to you when I get it. So we'll see, but no more water for the sweet potatoes in the final stages of the plumpeting up process. Now this bed needs to be weeded. This is the one that we're gonna put our cabbage in, and we just kind of let it grow wild for the rest. This is actually a squash that we let go to full term so we can save the seeds from. So we'll have seeds for next year, completely unedible at this point. It's hard as a brick, so we'll do that. But I left these weeds here for a purpose. They seem kind of crazy, but I am under the school of thought that having something growing in the garden and keeping the soil active and working it is better than nothing. So I just wanted to go ahead and just leave it here, let it just kind of do its thing. But now that we're starting to get kind of close, there are a couple things I want to do to prepare it. So I'm gonna go ahead and weed this out real quick, and then I'll show you what I'm gonna put in the bed to prep it for the planting that's coming up in a couple weeks. All right, so now that it's totally weeded, well, mostly weeded, I'm going to cut these kale down finally. Now, if you're asking yourself, why am I just now cutting the kale down and I haven't even harvested in a couple months out of it? To be truthful, I just wanted to see how long it would grow for, and really get an idea if I could do like a multiple year kale plant, which with this variety, this is the dazzling blue variety. And I mean, it didn't bolt, but I mean, it sure as hell got ate up by everything. You can see right there that you got the cabbage worm on there. So we're gonna go ahead and cut it down, and I need to figure out a place to maybe have a perpetual kale row somewhere within my garden that I can continuously harvest from. I think the best place to be would be somewhere like a more shaded section of the garden, which I definitely have plenty of that. So, and also what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these alfalfa pellets here and just put a crap load of them in the garden. It's nothing but alfalfa horse feed. It's $20 for that whole bag, and that bag's lasted me this year. And what it does is when it breaks down, it'll add nitrogen back into the soil. So we just go ahead and just lay it on top, and when it rains, it'll break it down. I may come out here and just give it a light watering just to get it started, but over time it'll work, and it's just kind of like an amendment process. It's not like a quick fix. But remember, this bed, the plan is to have this whole bed be cabbage. So if we're gonna do that, that's a nitrogen hungry plant. So we wanna get as much, we wanna front load as much of that nitrogen as possible, because the nitrogen is water soluble, so it'll leach out of the garden over time. So we wanna keep replenishing it, and just getting it started will work out pretty good. And all I'm gonna use is, I actually have this coconut half that we've got, and I'll probably put like 10 of these in there and just lay them right on top. All right, check that, 4 of those cups was plenty. So I don't really measure, I just kind of eyeball it. That's not an exact measurement, and it's so slow to break down. In my mind, it doesn't matter, and I've been doing it just for the course of this year, and it's worked out pretty well. So we're just gonna continue doing it that way. Like I said, there's no complete measurement to it, but I've still got the corn bed to do over there and the tomato bed, the old tomato bed. So we're gonna go ahead after this video, I'll clear those out, but it's the same process. And I'll probably set up another sunshade just like I did here. So if you haven't seen the video, this temporary sunshade has worked out really, really good. We've had some 95-degree days, and it has cut down on the losses on my Brussels sprouts completely, and they're actually starting to grow. So that's definitely a win. So we're gonna be moving forward with that process, and I'll show you basically my tie points for that one. And then you can kind of, if you want to do something like that, you definitely can do it to fit your needs. So I'm just going to use this bamboo stake and put it right here in the corner. At least for right now, I'm going to put it in the corner. And I'm just going to tie, I'm definitely going to tie to the back trellis. And then I may either tie off on this side of the trellis here in this corner, or actually on this corner. And then I may move this over into that bed just to kind of get that overlap like I did on this one. Well, you can't see because it came undone, but if I tied this one out like this, and then that way it gets full protection in the hottest part of the day. That's just gonna be a temporary measure, but that's kind of my plan for this bed moving forward. And we'll go ahead and I'll set this up in the next couple days, just so the soil's not cooking constantly, and it can actually help inhibit some of the weed growth. I'm not gonna remulch it because in a couple weeks, I'm just gonna have to remove the mulch and go over it again. So once I plant it, as soon as I plant it, I'm gonna mulch it deep, probably like 2 to 3 inches with straw. And that way I can keep the roots cool, keep the leaves cool with that, and then keep it going. And anytime, I am planning to fertilize all my other gardens soon. So as soon as I fertilize that, it's still gonna fertilize that bed and just kind of get those nutrients in it. At least one more fertilization before we start planting. And that way when those cabbages get in, they're gonna be nice and happy. Now for the fun part. So the cucumbers are doing okay. The heat's definitely taking a toll, but we're still getting some. This one got some bad pollination, but we still want to keep harvesting them. So I see some of this where it's been chewed on. So I'm just looking. Yep, there it is. So the pickle worm is back. So we definitely need to treat for that. And this is a very good time to come out here and harvest. This cucumber actually got a little too big. Successfully defeated the pickle worm once, and I guess I need to kind of tighten up a little bit. What I did when I got that is, so the pickle worm burrows inside of the cucumber, and so what you do is you come out, and if you start seeing it, you harvest all of your cucumbers first and foremost. Anything that's close to being ready, I just go ahead and pull, and then I'll treat it with some BT, and that'll usually knock it back, and then I'll treat it again. So this cucumber actually is having pickle worm, and then you can also see on it, we've got some eggs. More than likely it's squash beetles. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna spray that pyrethrin on it, and that kind of just takes care of everything. It's organic, and it is definitely not a pretty one to use because it wipes out everything. But I think it'll work out good because it'll take care of, and I did it before, the pickle worm and the squash beetle. So I can kind of get two birds with one stone, and then just kind of stay on top of it, because it's really hard this time of year trying to manage both, where you're treating with neem oil for some stuff, you're treating for BT with the other, and then you've got rain coming in between that can kind of mess up your treatment process. So I'm just trying to stay on top of it the best I can, and I find that this time of year that works out best. Now, like in the fall, it's no problem because basically everything needs to be treated with BT. So I'm just trying to stay on top of it as much as possible. And this is also a good time to come through, and anything that isn't growing right or not going to produce, like I'll show you this one right here. Like this little guy here is not going to produce. The heat could have got to it. It actually looks as if, yeah, I saw some of that frass on there, so it looks like it has the pickle worms right there too. So you want to just go ahead and get as much of that off as you can. And so we'll go through here and pick all those off and then treat. Did see over here on these black-eyed peas, look at that. First harvest of the black-eyed peas for the year. So we'll start getting these now. And this is how I like to do. I like to just let them completely dry on the vine, and then I can just kind of shuck them at some point. Since they're dried on the vine, I don't even rush to do it. I'll just make like a big pile of it, and then my son and I will sit down and watch a movie or something and just kind of shuck them away and see what comes up. But yeah, from here on out, we'll be getting these in flushes. So, you know, today we got a couple, but when you go through and you look at the plant, I mean, you can see we've got a lot of beans growing on here. So we should be pretty good to go. I saw some more. I think they're up top, which they're kind of a pain to get up here, but I can luckily reach through and grab them as needed. Now this little geranium kiss tomato is just the little engine that could. It just doesn't stop. Doesn't look the best, but it's not stopping. And this is really the reason why I came out, because I want to dry some more tomatoes, and I've been drying these, so I want to get as many of these as I can so I can fill up my dehydrator. Out here the other day and looking at these, and what do you know? The second flush of tomatoes are ready. So this is a good treat, starting at the bottom and working our way up. And these are good because we can kind of look at them and tell what's going on, any kind of pest or anything. See, we've got a little bit of pest here, so I have to treat this as too. This looks like the army worm starting to come out. But, I mean, we're going to be loaded with tomatoes again. Go through this whole patch and pull out all of the tomatoes I see, and I can see that we are getting some damage. So we need to just treat. That's the name of the game. This is the time of year when things kind of, the garden goes wild. You start to get tired. You're gearing up for the next season. It's hot, and I just take my time. And if something goes like that and it gets out of control, it kind of is what it is. I'm not about to come out here and have a heat stroke working on this stuff. So we'll still get plenty of tomatoes, not to worry. And we've gotten plenty of tomatoes, and it's just the beginning. So there's plenty of time to start treating. And that's the beauty of having a second harvest of tomatoes grow. A whole second crop is, I mean, the first one we canned them all. Now these we'll do make a bunch of tomato pies and all kinds of stuff, and just freeze them for the winter and make a couple more cans and salsa and all that fun stuff. So since I've said that I was going to dry all of these geranium kiss tomatoes, I put this cherry tomato in, and it's just gone crazy. Look at it. It's growing everywhere. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come through here right now and trim this down, if not eliminate this plant, because it's really causing issues as far as airflow and stuff like that. Now the tomatoes are a little bit smaller than the geranium kiss, but I'm not really, I have 3 geranium kisses and 1 cherry tomato. I would rather have the geranium kisses because they dry a little bit better and they're a little bit bigger, so we get a little bit more meat on the tomato, if you know what I'm saying. So we're gonna kind of see what we can get out of this, but otherwise, like, I'm okay with eliminating it. It's better off than causing issues on the rest of my bed than letting this go just so I feel better about myself. This is what we did here. I went ahead and cut that cherry tomato way back. I don't even care if it does anything, and it really opened it up. So I tied up this limb that was falling down to give it more space, and then I tied all of these up to kind of give them more space, give it more airflow in there. And I'll come back in at some point very soon and just trim up the bottom of these tomatoes just to let more airflow in and just keep the disease under control. For a second crop of tomatoes, for a first harvest on a second crop of tomatoes, I'm pretty happy with that. There's a fair amount in there, and they should just keep reproducing over and over. And I went ahead and just put that shade over there just to see what it would do. I had to do it differently on this bed than I did this bed back here. So this one gets sun all day, and I needed to make sure that it would get the sun, would be shaded on this edge all day. So I had to bring it out. And when you're doing stuff like this, it's super important to just remember that not all beds and all gardens are treated the same. And sometimes they need a little bit different attention, a little bit different care. So, you know, just adjust as you need. I feel like it's gonna work the best for us. I don't want to get the top of my head burnt. Being bald has its downfalls for sure. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. And then, I mean, when I pull up these sweet potatoes before I put in the broccoli, it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to really have to work that out so I can get as much of it shaded as possible. So I did notice that I have a watermelon here though. So these little personal sized watermelons have been working out pretty good for us this year. I'm going to check and see if it's ready to be harvested. I'm going to show you how I do it and the way that really works best for me. So I come up, find the watermelon, and a lot of people will like flip it over, look at it, they'll thump it and listen to it. But I don't do that. I just come up right here, and you see this pigtail? See how it's all brown? This watermelon is ready to go. So we'll harvest this right now. So good personal sized watermelon. I don't know if I'm gonna grow them next year. I kind of want one a little bit bigger, but for our family, this is perfect. We can cut up one and just eat it, and it works out pretty good. So that's how we tell. We just go all the way, follow it all the way up to the first little pigtail tendril. And if it's totally brown, that watermelon's as ripe as it's gonna be. And this one may actually be a little bit overripe. Now I harvested a lot of watermelons that were not ready in my day, and that's been my true and tried method. I do have a cantaloupe over here somewhere that's gotten swallowed up by the grass. I do need to check it at some point, but it's the same method I use. I don't go by color. I don't go by sound. I don't go by the bottom of it. I don't rotate my watermelons so they get an even color. I don't care. That's just the field bottom is what the color is on the bottom. I'm totally cool with that. When I was out here working, I was looking at the pepper bed here, and it's looking pretty good. It's getting a little bit the heat's getting to it a little bit. But what I noticed is some of the plants, and you can see more so here, are starting to look a little yellow. So we need to take care of that. And all that's telling me is it's time to fertilize. So I came out and I put some dry fertilizer down, some granules. I use organic, so it'll take a couple weeks for it to start to work. But we'll also come back in and inject, and that'll give it an initial feeding right up front. So we'll do that, and then that should help green them up and get them ready, because we are just about to be in pepper season. For us, it's usually the late end of the year. So, but for the most part, the garden's doing really well. We're just waiting to harvest, and this heat's starting to break. This week's gonna be in like the mid 80s. So some of this stuff's gonna do really good. And preparing your beds and getting them ready for fall, this is the time to do it. Even if you can only do it real quick for, you know, a week before, you're still getting a jump start on it. Don't be afraid to put some fertilizer in it and let it start working.
Good.